7:08 on Wednesday, May 22nd. And this is Salim MuWakkil on the Talk of Chicago, 1690 WVON. You can also catch us streaming loud and clear at www.wvon.com. Well, here I am again, privileged to have the pleasure of connecting to America's most astute radio audience. Tonight we'll be discussing many issues in the news, including tornadoes in Oklahoma and why there are so few underground shelters in Tornado Alley, especially in the schools. This part of the country is referred to as Tornado Alley because it combines all of the the meteorological and topographical features that abet the development of tornadoes. But despite this, and it is a pattern that is replicated year after year, the leadership of these states, Oklahoma, Kansas, Texas, Nebraska, these states that are located in this notorious alley, they don't have strict regulations that determine structural integrity but aside from what seems to be a regulatory failure, the sheer human drama churned up by this EF5, the top rated, the top level, the strongest, the most intense tornado that hit this area, is something that is both, to me, fascinating and heartbreaking. Fascinating to me. I mean, I'm one of those unfortunate folks who's fascinated by these tornadoes. When they hit, when we had these kind of outbreaks, I'm the one that's on the web looking for eyewitness reports and videos from storm chasers to try to see if we can catch the funnel in full rotation. That's what I'm looking for. For some reason, that just fascinates me. Like it's one of the most magnificent sights, as far as I can tell, that nature can produce. Really, is to see a tornado in action, despite the horrific consequences often. When I was a young guy, I think I was about 11 or 12, I had a very close encounter with a tornado during the trip to South Jersey, a family trip to South Jersey. But instead of scaring me away from those things, I've developed a fascination for them, these magnificent weather events. So I absorb all the information I can gather about these things. And so I was glued to YouTube and to the computer and to various news outlets to see what I could find. And I was, again, the lack, I was quite frankly astounded by the lack of an underground shelter in the schools that were hit by this tornado. The children huddled in hallways and thought that they were protected by these walls that crumbled. Although, again, this was an extraordinary tornado. EF5 is the high, over 200 miles an hour. Sometimes the winds go up to 250. Very little. There are very few structures that can survive that kind of assault. But if there was an underground shelter, they would be protected. Many were protected by those underground shelters. And I'm just, astounded. I understand that there's some geological problems in that part of the world because the soil is not appropriate, or it doesn't treat cellars. They seem to leak. There's a propensity for basements and cellars to leak in Oklahoma. Or at least there has historically been. From what I understand, they have ways of preventing that these days. But still, there's a tradition not to build cellars or basements or these kind of storm shelters in a part of the world that absolutely requires them to be there. So we'll see what happens. I'm sure that something will come out of it, something of a regulatory nature, because these children were just too vulnerable Although there were very heroic accounts of teachers shielding them and covering them and making sure that they were safe at the risk of their own lives. So these teachers should be commended and absolutely applauded for that courageous action. But it may have been rendered unnecessary had there been the appropriate kinds of shelters available. Okay. Also, it seems pretty clear now that the right wing overreached desperately in trying to tie last week's so-called scandals to the White House. The Benghazi and IRS scandals were revealed at best to be a product of bureaucratic clumsiness. Because they were overwhelmed by the Supreme Court's Citizens United ruling, which cascaded hundreds of new applications to the IRS, and they, of course, are charged with determining whether these applications merit tax-exempt status, and being so swamped, they needed some sort of shortcut, and so they chose this way to do it. Of course, it was inappropriate, and they're being chided and chastised correctly for that. But it was bureaucratic. It wasn't anything politically oriented, as far as I can see from the information so far revealed. And they were trying to get more information today from the IRS administrator, but she invoked the Fifth Amendment, and that's more a product of the Congress's reckless rhetoric, especially Darrell Issa, talking, virtually accusing her of a crime. And when that happens, when you get accused of a crime by a congressional committee, you have to have legal counsel. And of course, the legal counsel would tell her not to say anything that may incriminate her in the future. And that's why she invoked the Fifth Amendment. It's very clear. Of course, the Republicans are going to use this as some sort of evidence that she has something to hide. Nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, it was them who provoked that response from her. So, if it were not so tragic, it would actually be hilarious at the way the Republicans are desperately doing everything they can. It's almost comical, really. But not enough people are laughing at them. And they deserve rousing belly laughs, because they are doing enormous harm to this country for very juvenile reasons. It's pitiful and despicable, quite frankly. And they're not getting the kind of chastisement, the public chastisements that they deserve. That's unfortunate. Now, the AP scandal was indeed a true scandal, as far as I can see, but not in the way it was framed by the right wing. The scandal is the fact that the Obama administration really adopted a neoconservative mode of dealing with national security issues, this kind of scorched earth policy where they just subpoenaed all of these AP records in one fell swoop. This is over 100 reporters, not just AP, but other reporters who have used these phone lines, the Justice Department did this without any warning to the AP, which is something that had previously been done, and it was a very drastic measure that reeks of neoconservative ideology, and that's what's so distressing about it, because it was an administration that ostensibly is opposed to that kind of ideology, and that's the scandal. The press is precious in this nation, especially now that we have this national security fervor. When anything goes in the name of security, we can kill people overseas. We can create kill lists of American citizens and assassinate them summarily, execute them summarily without any judicial intervention or any judicial redress, and we can do that. This is a time when the press is absolutely necessary. The fourth estate, absolutely necessary. Yet the Obama administration is prosecuting whistleblowers at a far higher rate than other administrations have done. And this is an administration that pledged to be more transparent than others. And I think we have to hold the Obama administration to a higher level of accountability. The president himself made those claims, and it is disappointing that they're not attempting to live up to those claims. We have to try to make them do that with our activism. And then the other scandal, which I think is pretty large, but grievously under stress, and that's the naming of Assata Shakur to the 10 most wanted terrorist list. That's a scandal as far as I'm concerned. There's absolutely no criteria that would justify her being placed on that list unless it was some sort of political favor being paid. It's a scandal that kind of political consideration should enter the application of justice. And for her to be named on the 10 most wanted terrorist list is an atrocious, atrociously inappropriate labeling. On my Facebook page, there's a large discussion that erupted concerning the question of whether the president or Attorney General Holder had to sign off on Assata's new designation, or whether it was an effort that came out of the New Jersey law enforcement precincts and then relayed to the FBI. And Governor Christie has a new currency in the Obama administration. So some are saying that it was his influence that provoked the Justice Department to make this new designation. It seems implausible to me, really, that Obama and Holder were left out of the loop in this decision. But there are some folks who insist that they were not necessary to make this change, and it could have been done without them, without consulting them, or without requiring their signing off on it. But it just seems implausible to me, or at least very distressing that those two, Holder and Obama, would agree to such a dangerous designation. And I say dangerous because it conflates freedom fighting, the freedom fighters of the 60s, black liberation fighters, and those who wanted to ensure that the descendants of enslaved Africans were accorded the fruits of America in a way, and that they weren't disproportionately targeted for prosecution and for oppression. And the Black Panther Party was a part of that same impulse to try to stop police from treating black people in black communities as if they were the cops were an occupying army, and that black people had absolutely no rights that they had to respect. There had to be a reaction to that kind of oppression, that kind of oppressive treatment. And the Black Liberation Movement, part of it was that. The rationale for the Black Panther Party was that. The rationale for many other black organizations was oppression of black people, anti-black policies that were enacted against African Americans. And to equate the activity against that to terrorism is a grievous misnomer. We're going to talk about that and many, many other things when we come back from this break. 7:25. Salim MuWakkil here on the Talk of Chicago on a Wednesday night. Pretty moderately. It's a pretty moderate temperature out here. And the weather is pretty good. Not too cold, not too hot. We've had some nice days recently. But this is May in Chicago, and so it can become, we might even see snowflakes. So, although I don't want to jinx the weather, but you know how Chicago is. It's a lot of there's a lot of talk also about the president's speech to the Morehouse men, in which he again gave cultural advice instead of policy prescriptions. And there's been a lot of reaction to it. A lot of people are angry that he seems to be condescending to black folks when he talks to them, and not similarly condescending to others. He doesn't lecture them about their cultural failings as he does black people. But then there are those who say, well, who better to do it than the man who has been successful, a black man who has been successful and can prescribe the way to success. In fact, if you go to the website www.WVON.com and participate in the daily listener poll, you can view the current video of the president giving the commencement address to Morehouse graduates. And there was a question that involved that particular issue that I just talked about. What is your opinion of President Obama's address to Morehouse graduates was the question. The options were: A, it was appropriate from a black man who has so many achievements. 52% of you said that was the correct response. It was inappropriate for a black man to be condescending to an accomplished group. 35.7% of you thought that was the correct response. And C, who cares? 12.2% of you thought that was the correct response. But the right wing's response to his speech, in which they focused on on 6 words when he says, as a black man like you, drawing that comparison, they focused on that as being racially disparate. and they attacked him for that. And so that response really illustrates his need to be cautious whenever he deploys racial rhetoric, or rhetoric of racial fraternity. He has to be careful, because that rhetoric will be used by his opponents to paint him in all kinds of disfavoring and unflattering ways. We understand the president's dilemma, and a lot of folks want the president to be more forthcoming and to be more candid about the U.S.'s role in black people's disproportionate miseries. It's not simply our cultural failings that account for this. In fact, our cultural failings are, in fact, a consequence of our historical treatment. We couldn't develop the kind of cultural capital that other folks have developed because we were prevented from doing that. We had to do other things. We had to accommodate ourselves to white supremacy and figure out ways of surviving in a system that meant us no goodwill. So for the president to omit that historical context is not simply missing the opportunity to connect with black people, to express a kind of racial fraternity, but it's also neglecting to educate America about the context of African Americans. A lot of white Americans see black people in prison disproportionately. We're about 50% of the prisoners in this country, and you really can't blame white folks who grow up without any understanding of why that is the case. They think that is a natural state of nature, that black people are supposed to be in prison at such a disproportionate rate. But we have a president who can clear that up a bit, who can at least explain the context that resulted in us being so disproportionately incarcerated, why there's mass incarceration in our community, and why that mass incarceration has ramifying effects on our family formation, on our educational attainment, on many, many things. It undermines much of our cultural accomplishments. And yet to completely ignore that, and another thing is, this whole drug war, which was, as Michelle Alexander I think makes abundantly clear, was an adjunct of the Southern strategy that the Republicans enacted in '68, beginning in '68, and that drug war is responsible, probably more than anything else, for undermining the viability of many black communities, because it has siphoned the energy and agency of young people who had no commercial alternatives but the underground economy, and it has completely transferred all of that energy to the prison industrial complex and squandered it, and all of that is policy driven. The president said nothing at all about all of these policies that entrap black Americans. Yet he says that it is our own cultural behavior, our own behavior toward each other, that is the problem, is the reason for all of this. I mean, on some levels you have to appreciate positive words from the president, urging black students to be resilient and determined and dedicated to excellence. You have to applaud that, but come on, man. There's a reason why we are in the condition we are in. It's not genetic, or it's not something that we want to do. There's a reason for it, and I think for a man who's the president of the United States, who's an African American, who has a unique understanding of that, it would seem that he has a responsibility to it, or at least an obligation to make it clear, to give Americans some notion of context, it seems to me. What does it seem to you? Let's go to the phones and we'll find out what's on your mind. Mr. Wells, good evening. How are you doing?
Assalamu alaikum, man.
Walaikum salam.
Hey, look, Salim.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate calling in. Appreciate you listening.
Yes, sir.
And I'm going to continue to call in, and hopefully the listeners in Chicago will not get bent out of shape with other segments of the black community outside Chicago and outside New York holding Chicago and New York accountable.
Okay.
Holding for being blindly supportive. I want to be very clear about this. In 2007, after what was supposed to be an historic football game with the two African-American Super Bowl coaches for the first time ever, this was when this whole political narrative started playing out. Chicago was under what I call a professional athletic sleeping pill because of Lovie Smith and Tony Dungy having competed in the Super Bowl. I remember clearly there was a big to-do in Chicago mayoral politics when Daley was looking to run again, and I remind this incident to Al Sharpton, he won't deny it, when the black community, who had pushed Obama over the top, was supporting Daley for the mayoral election.
Mr. Wells? I thought he was saying, shh, Mayor Daley for the mayoral election, shh. And he was going to say a bad word, but he phased on out. I don't know what happened, my brother. Well, that's a unique construction there, going back to the Super Bowl contest between Lovie and Tony Dungy. I wanted to see how the brother was going to connect that. It was, if nothing else, a creative linkage. Let's go to Maurice. Brother Maurice, hey, man, how you doing?
Hey, thank you, God, for getting rid of that dead weight. I'm not going to get bent out of shape. I'm going to turn off my radio when I start hearing that stuff. It doesn't help me, Salim. It doesn't help me to eat. Doesn't help me to feed my family. Doesn't help put gas in my car. None of that.
But you know, man, for those who want to be aware of various discourse floating around, it's good to hear it.
Well, personally, I'd rather be rich.
Okay.
Thank you, brother. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Mr. Baker over there on the board. Good evening to him. Good guy over there.
Mm-hmm.
Equal time for economics, Salim. So much I wanted to talk about this evening. I wanted to talk about, I got a niece over in Madagascar, near Madagascar.
Oh, man.
Over on the continent, man, doing a 2-year stint in Peace Corps.
Brother, that's a beautiful country.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
but the conditions under which the people live,
oh, man.
God, it's terrible, the things he's given us.
Yes, it
And we got blessings to count over here in the USA, Salim. We got many, many blessings. We're far too blessed to be wasting time with all this esoteric insanity, I call it. But I also have a niece. My sister told me this morning on Facebook, this girl, 22 years old, is talking about she wants to distance herself from her mom. She doesn't want her mom in her life anymore. She got a little following on Facebook, man.
Wow.
Nuts. Told you I got some dysfunctional stuff going on with my son, but I don't want.
Well, I mean, it's personal. Is it a personal thing, or is it somehow more cultural? Is there a larger lesson we can try to get out of it, or is it something just personal?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Do not shower your children with all the things they ask for, and give them the privacy of their room, and let them hang around white kids that don't obey their parents because it rubs off.
Oh, so all right. That was that you think that's the genesis of the problem, huh?
That's how I see it, Salim. As I see it,
Okay.
I visited my sister more than once, and gotta get off the plane at Sky Harbor Airport. Them kids hate to see me coming out. They're brilliant kids, right? They really.
Why? Well, they hate to see you coming because you're considered a scold.
Because of the value system that I have, I will not spare the rod, brother.
Okay, all right, I got you.
I will do corporal punishment.
Ooh, all right, bro.
Effectively.
All right.
But anyway, I'm gonna do that again. But those are some of the things that I wanted to just share with the family today. They would be a little more interesting than the things that Mr. Wells was bringing to the table. But
I thought that was an interesting construction, man. I wanted to hear how he was going to do that, man. Tony Dungy and Lovey Smith, making some kind of connection to Chicago arrogance or something. But go ahead, man. Go ahead, Maurice.
Maybe he'll call back, or maybe he'll get you Saturday. Nice guy that you are, he'll be the first caller, and you will listen, Salim. You're better than me, brother. But I had an interesting Bible study class today over on 16th and Lindale at Greater Progressive Church with Reverend Eric Brown. Midday Wednesday, he gave Bible studies, and we got into talking about Oklahoma again. I was telling him we got blessings to count because that could have been us.
Sure, could have been.
Well, the discussion carried forward, and he had a van load of clothing and other items he was going to give to the Salvation Army. And we kept talking about it and the need that those people, our brothers and sisters in Oklahoma had. He decided that in a couple of days we're going to get together a lot of things, a lot of items, take some of the seats out of the van and pile it up with the clothing, water, canned goods. And he's going to get another driver and take it down there directly and help out the victims down there in Oklahoma. So that's what happened to me in Bible study today. It was a very good day for me.
Well, that's
very good day.
That's good, man. I like that. I like that conclusion.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. Good conclusion. Good conclusion.
Yes,
something constructive. Something
absolutely
substantive, helping people.
There you go.
Getting the work done. But now let's go to economics. Let's go to how Europe underdeveloped Africa. What was that brother's name again? Walter Rodney?
Walter Rodney. You got it.
Yeah. And I figured out, Brother Salim, why we don't do economics the way we should. He was right in his conclusion about Europe underdeveloping Africa. And you probably heard me say on the air, if you underdevelop the mind of the man, you have effectively underdeveloped the man.
That's true.
And this GIGO, garbage in, garbage out stuff, well, if you don't put economics in the man, you ain't going to get economics out of the man. That's why we don't do economics the way we should.
Well, I don't know if that's exactly right. I mean,
Okay.
I think I think economics is an automatic adjunct to a sense of cultural esteem. That if we had a sense of cultural esteem, economics would be something we consider more important.
It would automatically fall into place, you
It
say?
would automatically fall into place because we understand the need to nourish our own autonomy. Without a sustaining way to nourish our own autonomy, we're dependent on other folks.
Oh boy! Now reverse that, Salim. Could this be why we have no problem putting our money into banks that are owned by the people who used to own us?
Yes.
We have no issues with it.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Because we don't have, we were prevented, as I was pointing, we were prevented from developing that sense of cultural esteem.
Yes, sir.
And that has stopped us, I think, from operating in a way that is for our best interest, as a collective.
Well, look, I hope I heard you and Matt talking about him perhaps being on the show Saturday, and I look forward to that. And I'm going to do economics by the numbers and by the books, brother.
Well, hey, brother, that's a very beneficial lane to travel, my brother, no doubt.
yeah. And I'm going to work with that 40 million people, that census figure, 40 million of us.
Yes, sir.
$1 trillion. I'm going to start with those numbers right there.
Well, you see, you started something already, brother, with this, with this $52 thing. So, hey, who knows?
Well,
sky's the limit, right?
I wish 40 million of us would do that tomorrow.
Yes, sir. All right.
Ooh, I will be rich, huh?
We'd be rich, right? Dig it.
And you too.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But it ain't about the money, brother. It's about God. It's about family. It's about business. I hope we never lose sight of that.
Absolutely. Thank you, brother.
Okay, Salim.
All right, Maurice. Absolutely. It's about sustainability, sustaining our dreams with an autonomous source. Okay, let's go to Maceo. My brother. Hey, now. How are you, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great. And you, Salim?
Doing well, man.
First of all, let me just say hello to the WVON family, your listeners, Woods, Albert, Roxanne, Mansong. And let me just echo what Maurice said. Melody has a penchant for selecting really efficacious, efficient young men and women, and I have to say that Greg is amongst one of those efficacious, very hard-working young men and women.
Greg thanks you. He thanks you greatly for that.
Well, he's more than
it's well deserved as well.
Well, I just have to tell it like the umpire does.
There you go.
I call it like the umpire. I just have two things, essentially, Salim. One thing is related to one of your topics, and the other thing I just wanted to mention that to your listeners that the great Thomas Wright, Fats Waller's birthday was yesterday.
All right. Fats Waller.
Yeah, and you know something, Salim, he was a prolific writer, composer, and he died at 39 years old.
Mm.
And you just think.
I mean, 39 is such an iconic. I mean, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, a lot of brothers kick out at about that time. A lot of very, very accomplished brothers. Maybe there's some esoteric significance to the number 39.
Well, with
numerological.
Oh, numerological. Well, but you know how he died though. He was out at the Zanzibar Room in Los Angeles, and he was playing underneath an air conditioner, and he contracted pneumonia.
Mm.
And on his way back to New York, he died in his sleep aboard a train in Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is that what a tremendous talent, preeminent pianist. He could have been a concert pianist had the venues been open to our people back then. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
But they were locked out of it.
Amazing dexterity with his fingers. A lot of people just talked about how dexterous he was.
And to have such big fingers,
mm-hmm.
thick, fat. I mean that's amazing
mm-hmm.
in itself. And the second thing is that you had mentioned you were talking about slavery, and I wanted to ask you whether you had heard of the Drinking God. And this was a made-for-television movie that was written by Angela Hansberry that was supposed to air on NBC.
Mm-hmm.
Did you hear about that?
I've heard of it. I've never seen it or seen the script, but I have heard. In fact, I was trying to get the script for it at one point, but I have heard of it. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and the thing is that NBC refused to show it after they had committed to it because they said it was too violent and divisive. Mm-hmm. But it centered around a young an enslaved African man.
Have you seen it? Have you seen the script, by the way?
Yeah, I have a portion of it here.
Okay, all right.
And it talks about his name was Hannibal. He was 19 years old, and in order to deal with the situation of slavery, in order to endure or to keep his humanity or his dignity, he says that a good slave is a bad slave. So he resisted in every way possible. But the thing is when his mother was a house slave, and she was entrusted by the slave master. However, when the slave master died, his son, Everett, took over, and he had no mercy on them. And the thing that happened, he hired a overseer, and the overseer was just like him. And the point is that when they discovered Hannibal playing music to his this slave owner's son, it was in exchange for him teaching him the right, and they blinded him, but the thing is that the story, I mean, it is so well written, and what happened is that Everett, he goes back to his mother and to Hannibal to apologize for blinding him, and he suffers a heart attack. And he's dying, and all of the slave cabins' doors start to close. They shut their eyes and their ears to it, and he dies. But the thing is that reminded me of the voodoo. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
But it's so well, what I've read so far. It's so well written. But Angela Hansberry, we need to look more into what she was about. She was unwavering in terms of her commitment to the liberation and the freedom of all black people.
She was indeed. All right.
And then just in closing, when she was in a hospital bed in 1963, she got out of her hospital bed to go to this United Negro College Fund. There were some students that had won the contest. And she told them, this is where the title Young, Gifted, and Black came from. She said that they were young, gifted, and black. But this is an amazing woman, and thank you very much, Salim.
All right, my brother. Thank you, Maceo.
Okay, have a great evening.
You too. Brother Malcolm's grandson was buried yesterday. Yes, it was yesterday in New York, at a cemetery in suburban New York. Where his grandparents were buried as well. Authorities say Malcolm Shabazz was beaten to death earlier this month in a dispute over a $1,200 bar bill in Mexico City. 2 waiters have been arrested in the case. That is the status so far. There is some investigation going on, and there are many people who are trying to figure out more, trying to get more facts in this particular case. So it's a tragedy for that family, for the Shabazz family, and rest in peace, good brother. It's too bad that you never had the opportunity to manifest what you wanted to, especially in your in Malcolm's last years. He reportedly was really trying his best to make up for a lot of the negative things he had done in his wayward youth, and his grandfather was similarly wayward and made a pretty rapid adjustment in his behavior. So it's possible his grandson could have been doing the same thing, but he never got that opportunity. So again, rest in peace, good brother. Let's go to Earl. Hey, Earl. How are you, my brother?
Hey, my brother. Pretty good. How you doing this evening?
I'm doing well.
How does Maceo know about how fat his fingers were, man?
Well, legendary, man. Fats Waller was legendary.
I know he's well read. I'm just teasing. Hey, yes. Maceo, I'm just teasing you, buddy. He always, astounds me with the level of knowledge that he has and his ability to retain all of the stuff that he has read.
Yes, sir.
And so do you. Let's quite be honest about it. You've
Thank
read a lot, and I respect your interpretations quite a bit.
Thank you, man. Appreciate that, Earl.
Let me see. First, I wanted to start off with the president's speech and the criticism, and I thought it was appropriate for him to say that for more than one reason. I was associated with my college alumni association, and we often have drives, fundraising drives.
Mm-hmm.
And we have maybe over 200 members here in the Chicagoland area, and probably only 50 of us are active at any given time. And of that 50, predominantly most of them give back to the school as far as fundraising, but the other 175 don't.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying that to say that you do have to raise consciousness. Just because you have academic scholarship, it doesn't mean you have civil scholarship.
That's true.
And
You're right.
Those who criticize him for that venue don't necessarily understand just because somebody has reached a certain certain level of academia or scholarship that does not translate into giving back to the community. And what perfect place to ask the future leaders of America or the black community to keep in mind that you have an obligation to give back. And I think that criticism was misplaced. I thought it was appropriate, and someone who has dealt with an alumni association and felt the sting of rejection when you go on the phone and ask for contributions. I find it amazing how many people who will not give back so that somebody else can benefit from what they had a chance to go through. It's like pulling the ladder up behind you.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing I wanted to reflect on was the comments that often people said that how do you measure one's blackness, how your relevancy as a black man.
Mm-hmm.
And I always find that discussion somewhat meaningless from the standpoint that the only common period I would say that black folks had in history, whether they were men, women, or children, were when they were in the hulls of the slave ships coming across the Atlantic. Because when you came from different stations in Africa to go into slavery, and once you got here in America, you were participating in different level of slavery that may not have been of equal proportion of cruelty. And then once we, graduated out of slavery and into Jim Crow, there was still different levels of opportunity afforded different blacks. But that doesn't mean that you weren't mistreated or distreated. I'm just saying that.
Well, I got you. I hear you. I don't know if you are. I don't know if you're talking about Obama in general as being whether he's black or not, or whether he's sufficiently
not
black.
Specific. No, I'm just talking about the question in general.
Well, but I think the relevance of it when you speak about someone like Obama is that most African Americans, the thing that distinguishes us, I think, from other ethnic variations of the African diaspora, is that we are African American. I think we are been hyphenized by our experience. We came here as Africans. We didn't even know we came here as different tribal groups, but we were transformed into Africans, an amorphous identity, and then we were hybridized into American because that's all we knew. We were African American. American, however, looked at Africans as something inferior, and so we had a kind of dueling identities. We were African. And although we didn't really even know what that meant because we were prevented from knowing what that meant, and we were American, and the American part of us hated the African part, or the American part of us needed the African to be slaves so that America could survive. And so we have this dueling identity, and I think that Obama didn't have that in an ancestral history. His father was African. His mother was American. He didn't have slavery or enslavement in his ancestral history, and I think that makes a difference.
Well, okay, that's a historical point of view. But if you live in a real world and you step out there and interact with America,
yeah, but I mean, but Earl, when you step out into that real world, you step out equipped with certain kind of cultural attitudes, and those attitudes determine how you make out in that real world. Like, for example, a lot of Jamaicans come to this country, and they step out in the real world of America, and they succeed disproportionately because they come here with certain kind of attitudes. A certain kind of cultural capital. We, on the other hand, don't have those attitudes, and so
you say Michelle didn't succeed because
no, well, of course, many of us succeeded despite that. I mean, that's the miracle of African Americans, is that despite all of the intentions of trying to prevent us from being successful, we were successful despite that. That's the amazing story that we have to tell. But still, if you look at our situation, we are disproportionately miserable. We have disproportionate miseries. We are on the lower level of every statistic of social well-being.
But I'm still saying that on a day-to-day interactive basis with any other culture, they're going to treat you inferiorly, whether they know your historical background or not, or the Jamaican background, or the Haitian background, or the Brazilian background, or the Puerto Rican background. You're still going to be subjected to insults on a...
But that's exactly the point. Although you are subjected to the same kind of treatment, you don't respond in the same way. Like you have this part of Jamaica, New York, where black people earn on an aggregate more than white people earn. And most of those black people are Caribbean American extraction. And so that's because, and they were treated the same way that a lot of African Americans are treated. And in fact, even more so, because many of them are darker than we are, and so they had to suffer the kind of colorism problems as well. So, but they responded differently to that oppression. They responded in a more productive way for their own benefit because they had the cultural connections to do that. We were prevented from developing those kind of cultural connections.
Well, I just thought you said that Michelle was an exception, and I don't think she is.
Of course, there are exceptions, Earl.
But I don't believe. Look, I came up from Lafayette, Louisiana. Let's go back in my history. Mm-hmm. Okay, black folks were successful. Black folks were working hard, succeeding, getting by. Now, obviously, it was a Jim Crow environment, and they were not expected or allowed to participate in the greater...
It was an artificial environment.
Oh, yeah, it was an artificial environment, but they took advantage of that environment.
Yes, sir.
And I'm saying that's still a part of my upbringing, and I think that was a part of many black folks who were African American. And I'm saying, what was the distinction between that era, even though it was an artificial environment, and when we were able to participate?
Because the difference is it was an artificial environment, and when you have artificial environments, you have different kinds of behavior that evolves to accommodate that environment. My brother, we running out of time.
All right.
But this is a fascinating discussion, and you always provoke those kind of discussions, brother. Thank you.
All right,
we'll be back right after this break.
Enjoy the rest of the show.
Thank you. And we're back. 808 on the Talk of Chicago, 1690 WVON. Salim MuWakkil here, talking to you on this wonderful Wednesday evening in Chicago. A beautiful city, a thriving city, despite some troubled pockets. Black folks are doing good things in this city, and white folks too. All people, Latinos. This is a universal city that can take off if we get the right kind of leadership. There's some troubles now stirring in the educational precincts. They're going to close a whole lot of schools, and you heard on the news reports, unprecedented closings of schools. And of course, there is unprecedented reaction to that. It will be interesting to see how this turns out. A lot of it will depend on what you do. Listeners, what you do. It's up to you in many ways. So, get yourself on the right track. There is some interesting stuff happening this week. It's African Liberation Day, comes up on generally around the time of Malcolm's birthday, and this year it's falling on Friday, May 24th. That's when there's going to be an international symposium at the University of Chicago School of Social Services Administrations. That's at 9969 East 60th Street, 60th and Ellis. This is part of the celebration for this year for African Liberation Day. And then there's going to be on Saturday, the following day, on May 25th, from 12 to 6 p.m., there's going to be a unity march and rally at the Winnie Mandela School at 7847 South Jeffrey. It is an annual event put on by folks who are dedicated and hold the idea and vision of Malcolm X, El-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz. They hold it very, very highly in their aspirations, and I've never forgotten that Africa has to be united as a continent, throw off the residual throes of colonialism, and unite as a continent. It's still possible. It is definitely possible. And there are people who are fighting for that. So make sure, if you have that aspiration yourself or that vision for a united Africa, and you want to speak out in that, for that vision, make sure that you get involved with these folks at the Pan-African for Pan-Africanism and Power African Liberation Day Committee. For more information on it, just call 773-208-6602. 773-208-6602. And also, you've been hearing some commercials on the station about this upcoming State of Black Chicago Congress. A lot of folks are beginning to understand the gravity of our situation in this city and how the world is looking at us to see how we come up with solutions to many of the problems that are afflicting us. And this is an attempt to mobilize much of our intelligence and our agency and our energy in a direction that will help enhance our viability in this city. And it's going to occur on June 1st at the Emily and Patrice Jones Convocation Center at Chicago State University. It's going to be an all-day thing, and so if you're interested in finding out what's going on, if you want to add your voice to many of the efforts of what folks are trying to do to improve our situation, make sure you get it involved in this particular event. It's going to be free. You have to register, though. And it's going to be the State of Black Chicago Congress, June 1st, at Chicago State. Keep your ears peeled for more information. Let's go back to the phones. Brother Dirk. Hey, Dirk, how are you, sir?
I'm all right, brother. How are you?
I'm doing well.
All right. I just had three quick ones. I was curious, how did y'all war board tournament go?
Pardon me?
Did you ever get a chance to do that the board I gave you?
Okay. Yes, sir, Dirk. The chess brother. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
We couldn't get. There's only two. There were. we tried at one gathering, and we just couldn't get people to catch on to it. But
do you get the concept of it?
I get the concept of it. I do get the concept of it. And had we had more time, but at parties it's difficult, man, because there's always a whole lot of other stuff going on, and folks were distracted frequently, and we really couldn't get it going. But yeah,
right.
But maybe I think the way to do it is to have a dedicated session for just the game itself, and then we can we could bring more focus to it. Yes, sir.
Oh yeah, I was just curious had y'all tried it out, but I wanted to touch on the fact that let me say, brother, let me commend you again, man. It's a very creative attempt on your part, very imaginative, man. I appreciate that, man. I'm very proud of myself over that.
You should be.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to say that we're witnessing the tearing down of Barack Obama with the media and in government because he's soon to be walking out of office.
Yes, sir.
And once he walk out of office, they don't want him interjecting himself in any way into regular society with the insider knowledge that he have in the sense of maybe uplifting black people. Not saying that that would be his thing or what he would do, but they in the media and government and everybody else, they don't want that to happen. They're afraid that it might happen. So right now, they're destroying his image with black people by doing things like Asada Shakur and so on and so forth. They're using that as ammo. I don't believe that that was a decision of his own. Why would it be? You know, what purpose would it for him to make that type of move? Even though they'd even put these Boston bombers at the top of the list when they should be, and they're still finding people that's connected with it.
Yes.
They should be at the top of the list right now.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. I find it hard, or at least let me say, I find it distressing to think that he would sign on to that. I don't
think it was his decision.
Yeah. I mean, there again, like I say on my Facebook page, man, there's a very strenuous debate about whether it was or not. There are some who say, "Hey, let's not be naive. He had to sign on to it," and then others say, "Well, no, there's no statutory reason for him to have to be aware of what they decide to do."
Exactly.
Yes, sir.
But I don't want to hold you over, but I wanted to touch on that. You know, the whole African American thing real quick.
Yes.
See, there's a conflicting argument about that because there's unrefutable proof that there were black people here on this continent already.
Yes, that's right.
You know, and
it's irrefutable. You're right.
They lied. There's proof that they lied.
Yeah, but see
about the fact that all the amount of African slaves that they brought over here, only 1% of the slaves made it this far. They didn't bring them over here. They stopped everywhere else on the way to it. There was in the Bahamas and the other islands is where they took the slaves to. But the slaves here were indigenous. They enslaved the people they found here. And there's a brother on YouTube, Sheikh Wayel, or Lord Abba would be easier, but he got a documentary on YouTube called "Are All So-Called Black People Moors?" Etymologically and historically proof that they are.
Yeah,
that's a good one to check out.
All right, brother, I appreciate it, man.
Hardcore information in there.
Yes, sir. All right. Thank you, man. Thank you, Dirk. Bye. Yes, I hear that, and that there's really an aggressive attempt by the Moors to make that point that there were a lot, and there's evidence, as Irvin Van Sertima makes clear, there's evidence that they were black folks here before Columbus, but they were isolated settlements. African Americans as a hyphenated group are a product of slavery, of the slave trade. The other Africans over here, you can say African Americans without the hyphen, you see, because when you hyphenate us, those are the folks who were taken from various tribal groups, ethnic groups, clans and whatnot on the continent and brought here and marinated in this pot of enslavement where they were divested of their ancestral identities and folkways and cultural connections and created to be the product and the tools of white supremacy. We resisted in many, many ways, and many clever and unsuspecting ways we resisted. But nonetheless, our culture, much of our culture, was dedicated toward holding off and pushing back white supremacist kinds of socialization. The folks who Brother Dirk talks about, the other indigenous Africans who may have been here as explorers, they didn't go through that process. They had other ways of maintaining their cultural integrity. There are reports of African colonies in many southern hemispheric countries or regions, Brazil, Peru, Argentina, and Venezuela, especially Colombia, those areas, but many of these folks, after the European conquest of the so-called New World, and the slavery process began, many of these folks were transformed into many of the same kind of products that white supremacy transformed enslaved Africans into. And that is the uniqueness of African Americans. That's why that's what distinguishes us from other ethnic, varieties of the African diaspora. And there are many members of the African diaspora all over the world, unfortunately, because of the slave process distributed us to many places in the world. And wherever we are in that, as a diaspora, we've developed unique characteristics of that particular area. And in this country, those characteristics are connected to this whole process of enslavement and how we were used for that. Back to the phones we go. Let's see who is next. Kay. Hey, Kay, how are you?
Hi, Salim. How are you?
I'm doing well. Doing well.
Two things.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't. You remember how you said that? Well, I don't know if you mentioned it this time, but there's a law being passed that you could, drones could take out Americans outside of the U.S.
Yes.
Okay. Do you think that that's why Asada was placed on that list? Because that could be a reason for them to go and take her out. And it could be justified, right?
There are many people who are afraid that that isn't exactly what is intended.
Yeah, because I heard that they're now perfecting drones that are the size of insects.
That's correct.
So they wouldn't even, you can go on Cuba's soil without the Cubans even knowing about it, and they may not even have that kind of technology to help them.
You have pinpointed a very troubling potential problem. Absolutely.
Yeah, and then the other thing is, well, two more things, but I'll talk fast because I know other people are waiting. I don't consider Barack may be phenotypically black in appearance, but he was never raised as a black man. He never was. He grew up as a white person in an elite or upper middle class background based on what his parents were. So, I mean, not his parents, sorry, mother.
Yes.
And her family. So he was never raised as a black man. He became black because he married a black woman.
Well, he became, I think you're right. I mean, but I think he intentionally chose that identity as he was growing up. And he crafted an African American identity purposely. Much like this, like Manny Marable's book about the reinvention of Malcolm. I think Barack invented himself as an African American.
Right, but didn't that come after he started dating Michelle? Because
I think it happened before. I think while he was in college in Occidental, he talks about that. If you read his book, he talks about how he read so much about the black experience, and I can bear witness that he is deeply knowledgeable about our history in this country. And so I think he intentionally appropriated that identity for himself.
Okay. And finally, like a lot of blacks come to the U.S. and they succeed because the immigrant drive.
Yes.
But if you look at black Americans who migrate by choice to South Africa or even some of the European countries, they're doing exceptionally well. So,
that's true. You're right. Absolutely.
And they go there with cultural, how you say that, the
cultural capital.
Black immigrants come here with cultural capital.
They do.
But black Americans go to South Africa or parts of Europe with cultural capital, or even Japan, with cultural
generally
capital.
They do. You're right. And there is a self-selection process to immigrants. They generally are the most adventurous segment of the population and the most innovative segment of the population, or among the most innovative. And so they tend to succeed disproportionately anyway because they have this kind of immigrant, this kind of drive. Yes, indeed.
Yeah. I was really surprised. I wish I remember the name of it, but it's on YouTube. If I remember, I'll email it to your call or tell you the next time I talk to you. This documentary about the black Americans that are in South Africa, and we're talking mega bucks. They're making wine galleries. What do you call it? Wine wine farms. I know that's not the correct word.
Yeah,
like wineries. And
wineries is good.
Okay, and all these things that they are making.
Oh yeah, I'd be interested in seeing that. That sounds interesting.
It's on YouTube, but maybe I'm sure I'm not the only one who saw that documentary online.
Yeah.
So
just give me some key words that will help me tie into it. Black Americans in Europe, would that do it?
No, it was focused on South Africa.
Okay, Black Americans in South Africa. All right. Yeah, I know that. I mean, my granddaughter just recently came back from a pretty extensive tour of South Africa, and she was saying much the same thing, that there are a lot of very successful Black Americans in South Africa.
And then but the only problem is that they're starting to, which is good, they're doing very well, but and they even have preachers over there with their mega church and all a whole bit. But the problem is it's starting to happen is that indirectly, that it's human nature anyway to seek out your own. So they're kind of like clustering to themselves. And then so the Black South Africans, there's some sort of, it's not, overt, but there's a little resentment because aren't you doing pretty much the same thing that the white South Africans did?
Yeah.
You came there, you isolated yourself, and you got extremely wealthy.
Yes. That human nature always makes its appearance.
Okay, right. I'm going to let other people have
Thank you, Kay.
space.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, let's go to, let's see, Teresa. Hey, Teresa. How you doing?
Hey, how you doing, Salim?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Okay.
Good.
I just wanted to make a comment about President Obama's speech.
Yes.
I think the reason he said what he said, because he was talking about himself. He could have went into the corporate world, but he didn't. He went back and did what most Black men should do. Because I think what he was trying to say is that a lot of Black men leave the community, and look what's going on in our community now. We're not protected or anything. So I think that's what he was trying to say. Because he worked at Argyle Gardens for a long time, and he was under the radar for a long time. So I think that's why he said what he said, because, every man should be responsible for his community. And my other comment is, he may not have grown up in America, but I think what the bottom
he grew
line
up in America. I mean, Hawaii is considered part of America. So
I know, but I just want to make another quick comment.
Okay.
As far as we compare ourselves with other immigrants. We can't compare ourselves with other immigrants. I think people choose to come over here. And I think we lost, and the folks who do come over here with a sense of purpose. We lost our sense of purpose when we integrated, And I think that's the main thing that's what's really, happening with our community. We lost our sense of purpose when integration left, because to me, if you look around, I think we are the number one enemy of the most powerful entity on the universe, because the powers that be said...
Wait a minute. Universe is pretty big.
The universe. I'm serious.
You mean the Earth. You mean this planet.
I'm talking about the universe. Because when
You think white people are the most powerful entity in the universe?
Because what I'm just saying is, doing Reconstruction, I think the powers that be said, if they can do all of this with nothing, what will they do with something? And ever since then, they have kept their foot on our heads. Every time we take a step forward, they come up with something to take us back.
Their foot was on our heads when they brought us over here from Africa.
I know, but look what happened. Look at all of the accomplishments we did after when we was freed. We were better people. Matter of fact, it was like the energy that came from such an oppressed people. We made the world beautiful. We gave it music, everything beautiful about the world came from, I hate to say, a lot of people from America, a lot of Africans who were brought here from America. So I'm just saying is that, they saw all the stuff that we were able to accomplish with nothing. Most people, who could have gone through...
After seeing that, you're saying that they went out of their way to make sure that we couldn't accomplish anything.
That's right. Why you have Jim Crow, the Ku Klux Klan, and the unions and everything? Because I sometimes when I look back doing and think about all the stuff that we did with nothing when we were segregated, it was like I think it was obvious that we were too much competition. You know, for us to be so oppressed spiritually and everything. Look how beautiful our music is or was. You know, look how awesome we were physically.
I got you, but now, so
I don't know. Okay, what?
I'm saying, you know, that seems to be kind of looking back. Why are we on the lower level of all social?
Because our men are not in our community. Too many men are marrying white women. I'm sorry, and people don't respect black men anymore. I don't think they. Really.
Mm.
To me, all black men want to do is play. You know. All other nationalities, they get married under any circumstances. They may not be super duper in love with whoever they are with, but they know they need a partner. Okay,
well, there are a lot of sisters in Senegal and in Kenya who will say that their arranged marriages beg to differ with what you're saying. That they
different strokes for different folks. But I'm talking about what's going on over here.
Okay.
Okay. Really. I would love to be at an event with Michael Jordans and stuff. You see all these brothers sitting around with non-black women. And the other thing is, Obama went and got a sister. He went and got a real black woman. That's why he is as powerful as he is now. You know, because he's got a real partner and whatnot. So,
all right, my sister. All right, I hear you. All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right. Let's go to Will. Hey, Brother Will, what's up, man?
Good evening, Salim.
Good evening.
Good evening to the WVON family. Salim, two quick things right away.
Yes.
This first one, you may not recognize her name, but everybody over the age of 16 recognizes her work. Zelda Wynn Valdez. Does that name mean anything to you?
Yes.
She designed the Playboy Bunny costume.
Yes.
Yes. Yes, and every man over the age of 16, every male over the age of 16 know about that Playboy Bunny costume. At least the Playboy book, anyway. But anyway,
over 16. No, I think you got to go back a little further than that.
No, man, I'm just gonna say 16 since we're on the air. And you're supposed to be looking in that book until you get 16.
Well, Playboy is kind of antiquated these days, man. They went way beyond Playboy in these latest journals of pornography.
Yeah.
Although let me make it plain, Playboy was never pornography as we tend to think of it.
You're right. You're right. And she was a very, very prolific designer. As I remember,
there was a story on her I read about recently, man. That's why I know her name.
Okay. I saw this in looking up something else where she designed for Dorothy Dandridge, Ella Fitzgerald.
Okay.
You know, some of the top stars, even some of the white ones. I remember Mae West. And if you look back at the outfits that Mae West wore, you can see the same pattern there with what Dorothy Dandridge wore, and some of the Ella Fitzgerald outfits were kind of sort of like, you know, to me the same way they were tight fitting.
Say her name again, Will. Say her name again.
Zelda Wynn Valdez, Valdes.
Okay.
I don't think that she was I don't think that she was a black woman. I know that part. I know that much because they expressed that in the article that I was reading, that she was a black woman, but I don't think she was mixed. But the main thing that I want to ask you is about Asante Shakur.
Yes.
You know, Salim, you all were talking about it, and you were talking about her being in exile and on the 10 most wanted list, the number one on Timber. Did the one and only Mr. Al Sharpton have something to do with her being persecuted back during the days of her activism? I've read and heard. Let me correct that. I haven't read, but I've heard quite a few stories that Sharpton had something to do with cooperating with the FBI and in ensnaring and entangling her in some mayhem and in some acts against the government. Do you know anything about that, or does anybody in the audience know anything about that?
Well, I don't know if anyone in the audience, if you do, please give us a call, but I have heard probably the same things that you've heard, although I've heard it from from sources who know Assata and are familiar with the Black Liberation Army. They claim some of them now, not all, but they claim that Reverend Sharpton tried to entrap Assata by inviting her to a meeting in the Bronx when there were undercover agents who were going to be available, but she was prevented from going to that meeting and went somewhere else.
Well, wow. Well. If he did that, I wonder, did he do anybody else? You know,
well,
I wonder if he cooperated. Well, he in other way against somebody.
Well, he wore reportedly wore a wire for the DEA. But the Reverend says that it was in the act of trying to destroy these crack houses in Brooklyn. That he was participating in an effort to destroy these crack houses. It was part of a larger anti-crack effort in the community. So that's how he justifies it. But there are a lot of people who are still angry at Reverend Sharpton for allegedly participating with a takedown in Brooklyn, knock takedown by the DEA.
Yeah, and it's also rumored that he was caught in some drug involvement himself, which probably put him in position for them to squeeze his testicles and make him cooperate. I'm not saying that is the reason that it did happen.
I can't respond. I don't know about that. I haven't heard of that, but I do know of the other charges.
Of him cooperating or being involved in trying
wearing a wire.
Yeah,
in fact.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, I just wondered about it. Maybe somebody in the listening audience knows more. Salim, hey, I'm enjoying you as usual, my brother. And
thank you, man.
All right, man.
Appreciate it, Will. Take care. All right, Brother Will. Let's see who can we speak to here. Brother Harold. Hey, man. Is this you, Harold?
Hey, my brother.
Hey, Harold. I'm well, my brother. How are you?
I'm also very well. Good, I just thought that I'd call in and say, come see, come saw, based on the content of what he said during his speech to the Morehouse men.
Okay.
What
did you think about it?
It's irrelevant in terms of he has roughly 700 days left in his lame duck presidency. Mm-hmm. He and his African-American attorney general are involved in a bare-knuckles alley brawl to keep his integrity intact, to get out of office with his life and everything he else needs in terms of his long-term life. That he will not be able to do anything from the presidential White House for the black community. If we don't do it now with what he's already put in the pipeline, then we in deep trouble. So can I do a power analysis real quick on the deal on the McCormick Place, DePaul and Navy Pier deal?
Yes,
it's a $500 million deal. All right? And so you have to ask yourself, we talk about these TIF fundings, you say, well, who's benefiting from the deal? It's the mayor's deal. And the deal was put together by a guy named Peter Coffey, the DePaul Associates Vice President of Community and Government Relations, who happens to also be the Democratic chairman of the 47th Ward where the mayor lives.
Dig that.
Now, let me give you a couple other players in the game.
Okay.
And we got Thomas Hines and his son, Matt Hines, who both have received, since 2004, about $600,000 as lobbyists to City Hall for DePaul University. And Thomas Hines makes $80,000 a year currently doing lobbying for City Hall for DePaul University.
Okay.
Now, in the picture cutting the deal are none other than the president of DePaul University, the good Reverend Dennis M. Holshiner, Jim Riley, who runs MPA, a quasi-city, state-owned public agency paid for with our tax dollars, the mayor, and none other than a gentleman named Jorge Ramirez, who is the Hispanic guy running the union piece. Now, nowhere in this picture are there any African Americans in this conversation. Now let me tie in another issue.
And now this is you're talking about the stadium that they're
I'm
playing?
talking about $500 million that the mayor just put on the table for the deal for the expansion of. I'm a pretty good authority on tourism, wouldn't you say?
Yes.
All right. So this is the deal that's currently on the table with Choose Chicago and MPA for boosting tourism in the city of Chicago.
This is the one. This is the one that the sister, the former social secretary of the Obama administration.
Well, that's a good sidebar because she has now been appointed by
say her name. Say her name.
Desiree Rogers.
Desiree Rogers. Yes, sir. Okay.
As president of Choose Chicago, the nonprofit tourism arm.
Yes.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
So I'm asking questions within the question. Now, I get a call recently from Columbia College saying, Mr. Lucas, would you and the Black Metropolis Convention and Tourism Council write a letter to the man and tell him we need some TIF money because we purchased the Johnson Publication Building. We want to turn it into something similar to the Schomburg Center in Harlem in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, of course I'll write you a letter.
Mm-hmm.
Wrote the letter, sent it off to the mayor. I get a letter back from Andy Mooney, the head of economic development and community relations for the city of Chicago, telling me that right now they can't find any money in the TIF funds to help develop Johnson's legacy project, which is what they've named it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I ask you, they are saying that this deal is $500 million. All right, so let's call into the picture none other than the mayor of Rosemont, who is saying if the deal is $500 million, and we're going to lose the DePaul basketball team to this new stadium, then I think that we ought to have some meat off this $500 million bone, also, right?
Mm.
So what he wants for Rosemont Horizon is $100 million.
Wow.
All right, so now let me stop and ask the question, which I'm going to pose at this meeting when the field Negroes and the house Negroes come together out of Chicago State on Saturday, June 1st, and here's the punchline.
Yes.
As a world-class African-American community that is promulgating the authentic history of electrified blues, jazz, gospel music, and grassroots politics that elected and re-elected the first African-American president of the United States who came to Chicago specifically to become a community organizer in the process.
Yes.
Let Michelle.
Mm-hmm.
Huh?
Go ahead.
The question becomes, what is our cultural capital worth? Is Rosemont wants $100 million. What are we worth? Can we get $100 million? Can we get $50 million? What is the price? And where are the black people at the table negotiating our cultural capital in a city where the Bronzeville community has more international significance beyond Navy Pier and McCormick Place? When you come into the neighborhoods, the first neighborhood you want to come to internationally is Bronzeville. I ask that question, leave it open to the WVON family.
Good question, my brother. Good question, and I'm sure it will be on the docket on June 1st. Thank you, my brother.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it. Brother Harold raising poignant questions, as he generally does. Let's go to, see. I think I see Sambini up here. Sambini! What's up, bro?
Salim MuWakkil.
Yes, sir.
Second greatest talk show host of all time.
Okay, man.
Behind only the preeminent Lutrell Fleming Palmer Jr.
Man, that's high praise, brother. High praise. I'm struggling with that one.
Okay, Salim, do you listen to Inner Rush Limbaugh at any time?
Every now and then, man, for about 5 minutes, and then I begin to vomit.
I've noticed something about comments that the president makes, Bill Cosby, that certain brothers and sisters, black, so-called black people, when they agree with those comments, they take the exact same position that N.A. Rush Limbaugh takes.
Mm-hmm.
And Sean Calamity and Michael He Must Be Savage. I listen to those people. You know they do things. I've heard it over the radio station a lot. Instead of listening to what someone says and reading, they'll try to interpret what they mean. but they first agree with it without knowing the full context or the full words. And it's the same thing. See, I just read what the president, the entire speech to the citizen. And now I can take a position whether, whether or not to agree, but I'm saying that he's putting notice on the poor, especially, that the gravy train ride is over, and that message has been articulated for at least 2 decades. But coming from a brother, as he is, I think people should take heed to it, because that means the solution to their problems will be in their own hands, which is where it's supposed to be from my vociferously erudite vantage point anyway. See, when I ask you, do you listen to Russ, I would have never known about him except the free commercials that I done for him on this radio station, in terms of people claiming that they don't like him or he's a racist, blah 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 blah. So I began to say, who are they talking about? And I began listening to him, and then I used the conservative or the Republicans and the Democrats and the liberals. I put WVON in there, what I've been listening to for a while, and then I use history as a backdrop, and I decide what's going on and what's not going on.
That's the way to do it.
But I'm saying that in the final analysis, that the president, and this is an observation because I criticism is counterproductive at this point in my life. It'll be nice, and I don't think he's going to do this, if he will have something constructive, when I say constructive, to say about poor and or black people, instead of making assumptions that they're not living up to what he thinks or other people think they should live up to. Just like when he said, something to the effect of quit feeding your children Brown's chicken.
Right.
See, that has been tried before. That, to me, that is talking down to people, and that's been tried before, and it doesn't produce people who do for themselves.
Well, exactly what it is exhortation. We hear that there are exhortations on every corner, man. We got storefront churches who basically have been telling us that since we've been here. Do right, be righteous, blah blah blah. And that's their job. I mean, they're the cultural guidance counselors of the community.
I thought it was their job to win souls for Christ. In terms of
that's part of it as well. But that's considered a religious mission. But I mean, the president is someone who directs policies. His job is something contrary to that. And although you can I think you have to give allowances for him being the first black man to speak at a black college, the first black president to speak at a black college. So there's some kindred spirit there. There's some racial fraternity there. But at the same time, he's stepping out of his role by being so culturally oriented, man.
Well, I'm going to continue this conversation with you Saturday, but let me finally say this. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and I think he would have been receptive to me stopping him and questioning him relative to this. He taught that so-called black people were deaf, dumb, and blind. Did he not?
He did.
And then he also taught that they should do for themselves. I would have said to him, dear Holy Apostle, how does a deaf, dumb, and blind people do for themselves without any mental intervention into their deafness, dumbness, and blindness?
Well, that's exactly what the Nation of Islam was designed to do, intervene.
And see, I think he would have been receptive to me questioning him.
Yes, indeed.
I don't think he would have taken issue with it because he was a mighty man.
Yeah, he was indeed. Thank you, brother. Appreciate
it. Yes, sir.
All right. Let's go to, let's see, Steve. Hey, Steve.
Yes, thank you for taking my call. I want to make a couple of points.
Yes, sir.
One, with regard to an earlier caller, and I do take issue with the notion that sometimes people want to call in and assert that there are scientific notions or findings that have been firmly established, and there's absolutely no question. I mean, this issue with regard to an African presence in the Americas, pre-Columbian African presence,
yes,
it's hardly something that is decided science. As a matter of fact, the exact opposite is true. There's not a mainstream scholarly body that has looked into this issue that endorses that view, as a matter of fact. Not a single one. And yet the caller would suggest that this is decided science. People like Ben Sertima have been offering up this idea for years. It's not accepted by anybody, body as in scholarly body. And yet the caller wants to assert that it's
I think you're being a bit too general here, Steve. When you say it's not accepted by any scholarly body,
well, no, I mean
there are scholarly
psychologists, historians, geneticists,
the ones that you have consulted, perhaps may have denounced.
No. We all know that there are umbrella organizations. The American Psychological Association is an umbrella organization for psychologists and psychiatrists. Now, that is who we look to when we ask questions about this or that issue in that field. So,
according to a certain kind of canon precedent, which is notoriously white supremacists. So those who are looking to topple those traditions of white supremacy must look other places, and many of those people look to scholars beyond those who you apparently consult. And they have found that there's considerable evidence that there were not only were there black people here, but the original inhabitants of this so-called New World, who came through the Bering Strait, still had very strong genetic traces of African genesis and African genetic material.
And again, and unlike various other sciences, which again we can talk about things like cultural anthropologists and historians and so forth, there's a degree of interpretation.
Because of course you know that before molecular biology, molecular genetics, many people denied that Africa was the genesis of humanity.
Exactly. And the same standards that demonstrate that is absolutely an irrefutable fact today in sciences and among the scholarly community to which I refer. It is also the case that there is no evidence that is accepted as of today, including that from genetic science that supports that view. So we can't, on the one hand, like what we like when it's convenient from that
Steve,
body.
have you consulted the latest scholarship on Peruvian antiquity?
Yes, exactly. And the counter argument to that is that if you look at Peruvians as many Central and South American cultures,
the Olmec culture.
Exactly, and they preserved many of their dead in a way that you could extract DNA to this day. We've managed to extract DNA that's hundreds of thousands of years old from our ancestors and able to trace that. And to this date, we have yet to find African DNA amongst those preserved remnants of human beings.
Well, that's because these indigenous cultures were of a different order. Most of the Africans who came to this country, who came to the New World, were explorers, and they had isolated colonies. And this is what those who make that claim, right, like Van Sertima and his progeny, that they make that same case.
Right, exactly. So in other words, the claim is that, well, they were here, but we have a very convenient excuse as to why we can't prove that they were here.
Well, no, there's proof that they were here, Steve. I think you need to expand your area of scholarship just a bit.
I'm not talking about a debate between you and I. I'm saying that
I know, but I know,
every major scholarly organization that defines the people who have looked at these issues, none of them endorses this idea.
I think you're a bit too exclusive on that. None of them.
Well, okay,
Steve.
and I mean we can agree to disagree. But the other point I wanted to make was actually the reason I called in, and an earlier caller actually stole a bit of the thunder here, and that is that this notion of cultural identity as being a saving force for a particular group. I would remind people that the two largest economies in the world, growing economies, producing more millionaires and billionaires than anywhere else on the planet, India and China, are made up of people that are largely of the same ethnic group. Yes. And yet 80% of the people in both of these nations are living hand to mouth. So the wonderful growth in these economies still has done nothing to do away with the disparity and exploitation.
Well, don't say nothing, Steve. I mean, there's been enormous progress in India.
There's been progress for a certain percentage of the population.
That's right.
And others would argue that in places like China, people who were at least able to survive subsistence farming have been displaced by.
Yes, there have been these kinds of. development.
So, and to paraphrase Gandhi, who would say, I have no interest in transferring the oppression of the British for the oppression of my fellow Indians, of those elites. Okay. So the notion that, if you could create a united Africa and a consciousness there, that there wouldn't be a huge disparity that would arise in the same way that it arises in Europe, in Asia, everywhere
but
in the
come
world.
on, Steve. Now wait a minute, man. Now you know that Africa has been subjected to an extraordinarily unprecedented amount of oppression.
Absolutely. But I'm just simply asking you: do we place too much faith?
Well, I mean, can you blame people for aspiring for that kind of?
No.
Why dash it? Why dash it with this kind of skepticism that you are?
I'm asking the world to be.
All right. Thank you, man. Appreciate it, Steve. All right, man. Take care. All right, let's go to Mansong. Hey, brother.
Hey, Hotep.
Man,
that guy Steve, give us a break.
Yeah.
I mean, he's very limited. He's even very limited in his concept of main and major. He keeps using those words, main and major, scholarly organizations.
Mm-hmm.
And I think his main or major are euphemisms for white.
Yes, I think you're right.
And he's lopsided,
Yeah, that's my criticism of Steve. He needs to expand his range of scholarship a bit more.
And then he has to understand that the whole question for a struggle to regain our identity has a reason. Racism, white supremacy, one of the things it did, it was a system, as Dr. Karinga teaches, of denial and defamation of a people's history, humanity, and right to be free, using that concept of race, superior to inferior. So you try to destroy, white folks in power over long periods of time try to destroy our group identity to better subjugate us. So, of course, one thing that we do, one armament or one strategy is to regain that sense of identity.
Yes.
Steve, you need to go study, man. Anyway, listen, I was calling mainly, I'm glad you somebody mentioned African Liberation Day this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to say that it's the All African People's Revolutionary Party that, basically does that, worldwide. And, of course, other organizations like Omali Yeshitela and that political party they have are going to be in Washington, D.C., collaborating with other groups, And so it's going to be all over the country, in the West Indies, on the African continent, in black communities in Paris and, England.
Yes, sir.
And, in South America. So this whole institution was created by Dr. Kwame Nkrumah and his cohorts back in 1958 in Accra, Ghana, at that Conference of Independent African States. And then in 1963, when they formed the AU, the Organization of African Unity, they took it further and changed the date from the original mid-May, I think it was, to May 25th or something like that. But anyway, it's the All African People's Revolutionary Party in the Midwest chapter. So you're going to have people, party members and folks coming from Michigan, coming from different places in Ohio.
All right, my brother, I appreciate it, Mansong. I'm sure that the folks got the 773-208-6602.
Now, the one thing I want to also remind people is to come out also Saturday to the Center for Inner City Studies.
Okay.
You got that trio of experts on black genocide.
This Saturday?
Yeah.
All right. All right, my brother.
Shikari,
yes,
and
sir.
Kosi Mundari.
Thank you, Mansong. Appreciate it.
12 to 2. Okay.
All right, let's go to John. Hey, John.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Is this L.A.? All right.
Hey, how you doing? I'm sorry.
All right. How are you? Quickly, brother. You got a little bit of time.
All right. Yeah, I just wanted to respond to Steve. There's people like him, man, that, we as black people, we got to study our history.
Yes.
Because, he would make us believe that we never contribute anything to society. And one thing I want to say, reason why the schools failing, brother, is because, you look at the name of these schools, Marcus Garvey Elementary, Lee Erickson, whatever the school name is, the children not learning anything about the people who the name of the school is named after.
That's a good point, brother. Good point. Yes, sir.
And if you're going to Duke Ellington Elementary, why isn't there a music program teaching children how to become musicians?
Teach. All right, I hear that. That's right. That's a very good point.
And they need to learn about some ancient Egyptian history.
Yes, indeed. For real. Thank you, brother.
Okay, brother. I'm going to call you back on that issue. Thank you, brother.
All right, man. Take care. We all have too little time, but hey, we do what we can. You have a great future listening to the show because you have Chef Rome and his fabulous posse, Downtown Diva, Sister Shauna, and the rest of the folks will be on right after this. So stay tuned.